It seems like Sato Sensei would taste the best. Hi, this is Zan.
Is it more than a kiss, but less than sex? Hi, this is Justin.
Welcome to another episode of Otaku Tōku. It's been a while, but we decided to bring the show back, but with a better format.
Yeah, that's right. This time around, we're going to be more organized and start talking about spoilers right away. We're not going to break it into two halves. So if you guys haven't watched the show yet, you should do that before listening to us talk about it.
We're also going to try to make the episodes a bit shorter, and we're also going to try to release them at least once a month. And we're going to kick off this comeback with a show called Interview with Monster Girls.
One of the things we want to do different is just kind of give a little bit of a background of the show, the creator, kind of, point out some stuff. Also, that's just some of my favorite things to look up on Wikipedia. The original run dates were January 7th, 2017 to March 25th, 2017. So it was like a spring show, winter to spring. It was created by Pito or Pietsu, just depending on where you look for it. They're the mangaka. This is the only work published to date that I could find. Really couldn't find too much on them. I wanted to kind of try to do a deep dive on them, see like, whoa, maybe they worked on this before, possibly were an assistant to someone, but couldn't really find anything. New chapters for it are still coming out as well. So if you do end up watching this series and you're really invested in it, definitely check out the manga, because they're still up to date and you'll probably be far ahead of anyone else. The studio that put it out is actually A1 Pictures. And if you're not familiar with that, you're definitely going to be familiar with their other work. They did Sword Art Online, Fairy Tail, and Seven Deadly Sins. The anime that we watched is actually only consists of 12 episodes and one ONA at the moment. I just found this out and I was surprised. ONA stands for Original Net Animation. I'm familiar with OVA, as I was telling Nan, but had never heard of what original net animation is. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
The whole time, like in the past, whenever we talked about like that episode, I always referred to as OVA. I didn't know it was like a different thing.
Yeah, so like in case y'all didn't know, an OVA is like a original video animation. It's like something that was put out not necessarily for television broadcast. So ONA is probably what you're thinking it is, original net animation. So think like it was this one was made for like a specific streaming channel in Japan. But if you want to watch the entire series, they are all available on Crunchyroll, including the ONA.
So the show is about Takahashi Tetsuo, who is a biology teacher that has always been interested in demi-humans, but he hasn't been able to meet any since there's only a few in the world. But Takahashi finally gets a chance to speak to them when they appear at the high school he teaches. And at first, Takahashi only does this to learn about them, but afterwards he starts to look out for the girls. Then the whole show is about their daily lives and how they interact with one another. Yeah,
so the cast is introduced kind of slowly, in my opinion. So Takahashi is like the quasi main character. That's how it feels like anyways to me. And then very soon you're shown Hikari, and she's actually a vampire and also his first like interviewee. He learns about like vampires and how they get blood from the government and stuff. And then slowly on, you're introduced, like in typical anime fashion, you're introduced to the rest of the characters. Just to get them out of the way, there's Machi. She is the Dudahan. If you don't know what a Dudahan is, if you've ever seen Dudaha, one of the main characters, the one that wears the like fox style helmet, she's a Dudahan actually. I thought that was kind of interesting. And then also think the Headless Horseman from Sleepy Hollow. That's all she is.
I didn't know what a Dudahan is until they brought it up in the show.
And so I had never really thought about it either. I didn't realize that. I looked into it a little bit more. It's like a fae from Ireland or fairy, whatever. I
didn't know they had like a specific name for it. I just thought, oh, Headless Horseman, there we go.
And they're based from I want to it's Ireland or Scotland. I can't recall, but I'm pretty sure it was Ireland. So after that you have Yuki. She's a snow woman, which is actually I had to think about this for a little bit. I had never heard of a snow woman before, and it's actually because it's a very regional thing to Japan.
Yeah.
Outside of that, you probably won't find too much similar to it, unless you count Frosty the Snowman, which is still a bit of a leap from it. But like, I was kind of curious. Like, I wonder if there's any other. And right away, I knew. Oh, so Hiei's sister from Yu Yu Hakusho. She was a snow woman.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And so, and there's a few other ones. I just can't think of anyone, but that's the first one that came to mind. Was Hiei's sister, the one that Kuwabara falls in love with. And then the last one is Saki, who's probably my favorite, and probably I'm gonna assume Anne's favorite.
Yeah.
She's a succubus, but she doesn't like to flaunt it. And if you don't know what a succubus is, I mean, there's probably one of the most common ones, other than the vampire. Probably right after the vampire, I would assume. It's like, you know, succubus. You know,
they're all seducing people.
They're man eaters.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's pretty much the main cast and all that. So I guess we can go down and list and just talk about each one of them and like what we like about them and all that. So let's talk about the main. Pretty much, I guess you could say he's pretty much like the main character.
Yeah,
like Takahashi. Yeah,
Takahashi. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of him?
I thought it was pretty cool. Like he showed that, you know, he's really smart. He's really studious. I think that's the right word for it. Like he likes to learn about new stuff. That's why he wants to learn more about Demi humans and all that. And he's a kind person. But even though he's like really kind, he has his limits. Like for example, remember that one episode where Machi was trying to kiss him and all that while he's carrying stuff, and they end up end up falling, and then, you know, it looked like Machi was gonna like not catch her head, but she caught it in time, and Takashi kind of like scolded her for that, being like, you should be more careful. I actually like that, because it showed that even though he's a nice guy, he has his limits. Like he can get upset at times, you know.
So yeah, I actually agree with that. It was kind of making me feel uncomfortable at a certain point. But him scolding him kind of helped me like him a little bit more, just because up until a certain point there was like no boundary put in place between him and all the girls.
Yeah.
And there was definitely, it felt like a position, he was abusing a position of power. And I know this is like an anime and everything, and this is all supposed to be taken in light. I totally get that, but I couldn't help. That's the thought that flashed into my mind watching this, like especially when he was talking about, you know, sex and stuff. So I was just thinking about how awkward it would be to be talking to any adult, let alone a teacher, about like, so is sucking blood kind of like sex?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
A little bit of enthrallment there.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah.
It really, yeah, it kind of felt like there's a little bit of grooming, but that thought throughout the series kind of entered my mind every now and then. It kind of did pull me out of it.
Because like the scene we're talking about is where he talks to Hikari about that, because like he's trying to see if sucking blood can be seen as something like sexual with vampires and all that. And yeah, that scene, I was like, I don't know why he has to ask about that, but I guess it's because, you know, only research he's done about demi-humans before talking to his girls was that just like books, it's like stories and all that. So maybe that's why he asked about it, because in stories they maybe portray sucking blood as being like sexual and all that. So that's the only reason I can think of. But yeah, it's still kind of weird to ask that to like a student overall.
Yeah, and so as you go on, it kind of it gets diminished, that whole thought, but there's still like a lot of inappropriate things that go on. Like he essentially makes Yuki take a foot bath in front of him, and and you know, like, this is like, damn, dude, like, you got a lot of fetishes. Like, yeah, he fetishizes demis and stuff. And then Machi, who has a crush, it's like thrown right out there, and she's jealous of Hikari, because Hikari gave him a kiss on the cheek. just a friendly kiss, but Hikari didn't make it seem, which is like one of her character traits. She likes to like embellish the truth, and so that's going back to what you're saying. The whole point of why Machi was even trying to kiss him to begin with, because she was jealous and was like, I want to kiss Sensei too.
Yeah.
And and so one of the big things I thought was kind of a flaw on Sato, the succubus, is that she actually knows that Machi has a crush. She knows like early on in the series, the first season, that she has a crush. And I feel like her as a teacher, her responsibility would have been to inform Takahashi of this, and Takahashi nipped this in the bud, pretty much saying like, yeah, no, this ain't gonna happen. I'm your teacher. I care about you, but not in that way.
Yeah.
There's I just felt like that was a missed opportunity, just to kind of like, that would have made me feel better watching the series.
Yeah.
But I still have this kind of in the back of my mind. But there's also things that he does subtly, like, you know, he's on friendly terms with all their parents. Very friendly terms.
I think she kind of brought it up with him during that episode where they go to the pool. Like, I think Takahashi's like, well, like, yeah, I don't really care, because like, you know, she's like a student, so it's whatever. And that's why Saki was like, well, you know, I'm not a student. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah. So that whole relationship I wanted to see more of.
Yeah, same.
I really want to see that explored.
Yeah, same. So what do you think about Hikari overall?
I actually don't care that much for characters like that.
Right.
Yeah, you know, it hits a little too close to home. I don't know. Just a little bit too out there, too forthcoming. I mean, great character to kind of keep the show. I'm not saying, but me personally, I wouldn't want to be friends with her. I don't yeah. Like, she's a little too high strung. Or that's probably not the right word. She's just a little too hyper. There we go. She's too hyper. If anyone is a little bit too high strung, I would say maybe Saki's a little bit too high strung, but in a good way. She's like more worried about, you know, her powers. She's scared of, like, you know, making people fall in love with her on accident. And but Hikari, I won't lie, like, when it became kind of more focused on her, I would be like, okay, come on.
I get you. I kind of liked her. I thought she was funny, but even though, like, I like how she kind of like tries to mess around with people, but even though she's like that, she shows that she is like a caring person. Like, she's really observant. Like, she saw firsthand how difficult it was for Machi to have to use one hand to, you know, hold her head, then the other hand to like hold the bag, and that's why she kind of brought that up to Takahashi, be like, hey, maybe she'd let her like wear a backpack so it'd be easier for her, so she can hold her head with like both hands and stuff, you know.
Right. Yeah, she's definitely necessary for like the story. She's like since she is more hyper, that also entails she's the most outspoken, because she also helped Yuki, because she felt like people were talking crap behind her back because she was a Demi. And in a way they weren't talking about, they're treating her like an equal. They're just, you know, two girls being kind of petty and just talking crap about her.
Yeah.
And Hikari heard this and said, like, if you're gonna talk crap, say it to their face, not behind their back. Which, I mean, who doesn't want a friend like that who's gonna take your side?
Yeah, exactly.
But how did you feel about Machi?
I thought she was pretty cool. Like, she's pretty, out of all the girls, I think she was like the most chill, and like she showed that she was like also like the smartest, because remember that one episode where, I guess they do this in Japan, where like you take tests and you post your score up like out in the open so for everyone to see.
Yeah. I think it's like, you know, them promoting healthy competition, maybe.
Yeah. And she happened to become, she was like number one after like one of the tests. So.
Yeah, after studying. Yeah, she's, I think out of the three monster girls, she was probably my favorite. One of the things I noticed, like, right off, if her head was actually attached to her neck, she would be the tallest, and she is the tallest even without her head.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you noticed that. But,
yeah, I noticed that, especially like there was that one scene where Takahashi kind of imagined what she would be like if her head was actually attached, and like yeah, from there it's like damn, she is pretty tall. Out of all the girls, but yeah, I thought it was also interesting how the other girls, like all the other Demis, she's like the most noticeable Demi because everyone else can like pass off as like a human, but with her, like her head like is like she has to hold it, like she's headless and all that. So like around to that, like you look at her like, oh, you'd be like, what the fuck, like
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that was what I was going to bring up next. Like she's probably the one that has to deal with the eyes. But the crazy thing is, so you actually see her out and about probably a little bit more than Hikari. Like cuz they actually take her to like a college, Takahashi's old college, to meet like one of his friends, whose profession is just the study. Like he works at the college still, and on their way there, you actually get to see them walking through the streets, and I'm like surprised because they say there's only 3 Dolohans. They say this.
Yeah,
there's only 3 Dolohans in the world. And one of them is in Japan. You'd think that there'd be a little bit more people freaking out with a girl with carrying her head and there's fire. I would figure there'd be more people staring.
Yeah,
at it.
yeah.
I mean, is it like was there a government broadcast to be like, oh, don't look at her, don't look at it. If anything, like they'd maybe broadcast that, and I highly doubt it. But I'd figure like there'd be more of a celebrity-esque to it. And if she is that rare, I'm surprised that they aren't celebrity in their own right. Like people coming up and be like, "Oh, how cool! We got this energy drink. Let's have a vampire promote it." Or, "Hey, check this out. We got these new backpacks. Let's have this Doulahan promote it." You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. But you made a good point where like no one like really reacts to Machi because like you said, it's only 3 in the world. So you would think like while walking around in public, even in school, you would see people be like, what the fuck, like she has why is she holding her head around, like you don't see any of that. But I think that would have been funny. They showed at least some people doing that.
I mean, me personally, I don't gawk at people with like disabilities or anything, but if you see someone wearing a prosthetic, you're gonna just kind of glance over. You're gonna just so you can be like, oh, did I just see what I saw? Okay, and then walk on.
Yeah, exactly.
Catch something in the corner of your eye. Especially, I don't know if you've ever seen someone, but I saw someone walking with a prosthetic. It was bright pink, and just I caught a color. And I'm gonna glance my eye. I'm gonna glance over it, so I can only imagine that's the same case when you see her neck on fire.
yeah, exactly. And like the episode where it was all about her, like she pretty much went out with Takahashi and he was just walking around with just her head. So you would think like someone would be like, what the heck? Is he just walking around with a head? What's
That's
that?
Right. The second thing is they go on a date, a practice date or something. It was something like that, right? It was like more or less a date. Yeah, they took Machi's head and Hikari kept the body. And you now, because they're in a park at one point and not one single person would go over there. I'd figured there'd be at least like one kid curious to be like, what's this?
Yeah, and then they were like out at like an outdoor restaurant thingy. They were like chilling and like eating and drinking and stuff. You would think someone would say something about them.
Yeah. So moving on from Machi, what do you think about what were your thoughts on Yuki?
I liked how they developed her character because at first I didn't really like her because I thought she was just there to be like, oh, I'm shy and I'm fragile and I need people to protect me and all that. But later on, I think the way they established how like she's like an otaku. She likes reading manga, like she likes gag stuff. She's also like kind of like a pervert as well. I like how they developed her character because that to me made her more interesting rather than just being like, oh yeah, I'm just a fragile girl and that's it.
Yeah, and I liked how this show kind of showed the implications of not speaking out and stuff because she was coming off standoffish and it was very apparent to a lot of people like, oh, she must think she's better than everyone else because she's a Demi, and just I've always thought that. Now I'm kind of like, well, maybe they're just shy. Maybe they're just really, really shy. Because I was that way, and I've had people tell me like, oh, you're kind of stuck up, aren't you?
No.
And like, no, I don't have anything to say. I'm just, you know, sometimes people interpret wallflowers as being kind of pretentious dicks.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked her. Her story development. I wasn't a fan of her because of the same thing you said. But like out of all the characters, she got fleshed out like probably the fastest. It felt like, because she's also the reason. Essentially, they kind of create like an impromptu club for just Demis, like a support group.
Yeah.
And she's the one they quickly figure out, because there's only 3 of them, which one of them asked it, and she's like, yeah, I did it. Machi, because Machi and Hikari's like, I didn't ask, and Machi's like, I didn't ask, and they're like, well, that and she's like, yeah, I did. And I really like that. I like the idea of her, like, you know, she quickly came out of her shell and realized, like, you know, oh, people think this way because I'm people. I think people don't like me, so I'm not going to talk to them. And then there's implications. People didn't like her because she wasn't talking to them.
Yeah, I like how she became more silly as the show went on. Like that one episode where she wanted to help everyone cool down, but you know the only way she can like help people to cool down is by feeling distress, like feeling like negative emotions. So she started like acting out situations that would make her feel sad, like her losing her friends, or so she's all like, "Curse you!" She's like, "Oh yeah." I thought that was funny.
Didn't she started to get embarrassed, and that like started to make her kind of cool off, right?
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
So she actually, because they were saying, oh, maybe if you have fake feelings, like it'll have the same effects, and they quickly realized no. But she started to feel really silly, so like embarrassed that she's doing all this, and she actually was kind of, but it wasn't the same effect as if she was really sad.
Yeah.
The first time you meet her, she's sick and she feels really, really ill, and was that her where they have to carry her?
Yeah.
No, I'm getting her mixed up, I think.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, she was one of the girls. She was they had to carry her off because she was getting too hot at the gym or something.
That's right, at the gym. Yeah. And then so going into Saki or Sato. I think Saki's her nickname. I really liked her. I liked her modesty, but I also like how she's not actually modest. She just doesn't want. She just doesn't want to be in. She doesn't want to be a sore thumb. So she kind of doesn't want to use her powers. She doesn't like her powers, and one of my favorite things throughout the series is that she thinks that Takahashi doesn't have any. Her powers doesn't have any effect on her. So that's makes her kind of attracted to him, and so I kind of like that. that was probably the funniest thing, and I actually found myself more invested in their relationship together. That was probably the biggest thing. I could honestly just watch a show about those two together. Maybe them like actually eventually going on a date, outside of being, you know, faculty students or you know, being as faculty and not having to watch students at the swimming pool.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was one of my favorite things too, like seeing that she believes Takashi didn't have, like, her powers didn't have any effect on him, but in reality it did. It's just that he's like pretty good at hiding it. So every time, like, you know, she does her succubus stuff and she's like, oh man, it didn't have any effect on him. But then you cut back to Takahashi and he's all like, oh my god, why is she so sexy? Like, what the heck? like she's like, oh, I was about to have a heart attack and everything. And like that, and that one scene I really liked where like she was like zipping up her jacket, and then it made her boobs kind of bounce, and you just look at Takahashi's like face after that. It was really funny.
That was like one of the few laugh out loud moments for me. Was just that one thing, that one moment that you just described, that in the pool, when she's at the pool and she's like, why don't you check out my swimsuit, without even thinking about it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I remember, I think most part they only focus on the fact that if she make any contact with people, or if, you know, people see her cleavage and all that, and that's when they get affected by their powers. But apparently there was that one time when she was in the subway and she made it like all the guys in the train like have a sexy dream about her or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was I would probably say hers is probably the most inconvenient out of even Machi, because Machi just has to worry about her head, but all she has to do is get a baby Bjorn for her head, and she can carry it around with her. You know, like like a little baby backpack. She can throw her head in the backpack.
Yeah, or she can like, I never understood why it was Machi like, you know, sometimes you see her wear a strap so she can attach her head to her chest while she's writing or eating. I was like, why don't she just wear that all the time when she's walking around, you know?
I want to say they talked about that. I think it makes her like really sweaty or something.
Oh, okay, that would make sense. Yeah, and then,
I'm pretty sure they talked about like the harness makes her kind of sweaty.
yeah.
The other thing is because the whole backpack thing. You would think that before the school year started, they would have the students' parents would have met up with the principal and been like, this is what we need from our kids, because then again, I don't know how Japanese school systems work, but there's usually some sort of accommodations put in place for anyone with a disability, and not saying that they're disabled, but they do have stuff that would make them a little more vulnerable than other students. Like Akari, she can't really be out in the sun, she has sensitive eyes. She sunburns super easily. Machi, I mean, obviously her head.
Yeah.
Yuki, she tends to overheat a lot easier.
Yeah.
And then even Saki herself, I mean, like when you see her, everything, her entire appearance is premeditated. So like the fact that there's a reason why she wears slippers outside her house. There's a reason why she's wearing a tracksuit. There's a reason why her hair is in a ponytail. So I would figure that there'd be some sort of, you know, accommodations that were talked about before them being hired or them coming to that school. And they don't even really talk about like why all three Demis are there, like just by happen chance, because it sounds like Yuki lives by herself, or that's what it made it seem like she lives in an apartment near the school or something.
I guess it was something they just never thought much about it. Well, especially with Machi, I guess she's like, oh well, I've always done this. I always just went to school with one hand holding my head, one hand holding my bag, and you know, that's it. I just got used to it. But like seeing her, the way she lived was interesting. Like how, like I said, like she had to wear a strap thing to like write and eat, and then how to shake her head saying no, she actually literally had to pick up her head and do like that shaking motion. And oh yeah, like, that one picture you have where like they showed how she sleeps, like her head's like inside a kind of like a dog house looking thing.
Yeah, I thought that was so weird. And I guess I didn't really think about it until we started talking about, but that also might be why she isn't shy. Because she's probably, she's the most polite out of all of them, and she's also can actually talk. Like Yuki, she's more reserved. Machi, she'll actually say like what she's thinking, and I wonder if that's because of her limitations. Like she can't really make expressive head movements. She can't like shrug her shoulders, you know, or like put her hands up or anything like that. So I wonder if that's why her character personality is the way it is.
Yeah.
Jumping from the characters real fast, I mean, we're throwing a word Demi around. So Demi is actually the politically correct term. They say that is the politically correct term for monsters. And so in this world, they used the word Demi, and they figured out that, well, this is actually a genetic mutation. So think X-Men. That's essentially what we're dealing with. Is this like people with genetic mutations, and they kind of go into it like, oh, maybe all these people that are of legend, like vampires and stuff, were actually Demis, but they weren't really monsters. They're literally born that way with a genetic mutation. Like they had to drink blood. They had to live in isolation so they wouldn't affect people, which makes sense. I mean, they kind of dive into that, and then there's a little bit in like the first 2 episodes where they kind of talk about like how the government kind of helps everyone, kind of like a welfare type of thing for specifically just so vampires aren't, you don't have people that are like vampires like Ikari not going around and looking for blood. Like they can just they get like a ration of blood so that they can drink because she actually needs it. I think she has to eat it, but there's also something I really liked is like they kind of make the monster types its own. Like, so vampire, she can go into the sun, she just will badly get burnt. And of course they do I've seen this one a lot where they're like, well, what happens if you were to get stabbed in the heart? Well, I figured like everyone else I would die. They kind of talk about that, and that's what I would say like the good first part of the show, which I personally wasn't my favorite part. Was like the first half of the show.
I think one of the things I really enjoyed about the show is just learning about the Demis and like how they live in society, like how going back to how Kakari kind of she gets like blood from the government on that, but she establishes that there are some vampires out there who don't need blood, and they're kind of seen as like vegetarians in a way. And I thought that was interesting, and how what was his I just looked at the pronunciation of his name, like Saki's friend, like Ugaki, how he's like he's part of like this the police force where they focused on mainly on Demi's like Demi crimes and all that. And I thought that was pretty interesting. I kind of wish like he talked more about what he did, but like he mostly just talked about how a lot of the crimes he had to look into involved succubus, because like they had to figure out like, okay, this guy got affected by the powers of the succubus. Was this intentional or not, or was it just like an accident and all that? And that's how he actually met Saki, and that's how they became friends and all that, because she was in one of the cases that he had to look into.
Yeah, and she had known him since she was like in high school too, right?
Yeah.
That's what I remember. And then there's Kurtz, which there's not really much to go on because you don't even know that much. He's just like a German kid that has who isn't affected by succubus's aphrodisiac effect. And so like that's why there's a kid on this special task force that deals with Demi. But even Ugaki says like there's not that many, so I'm not really dealing with that many cases.
yeah. That's like just the one he just talked about. But yeah, I didn't care much about Kurtz. Like he showed up, and I was like, okay, he's not affected by her powers. All right. And then
I was extremely disappointed because one of my dislikes of the show was, so we're only shown female Demis, and I was kind of curious, well, is it more common for females to be Demis, or are there male Demis? They don't talk about that like at all. That wasn't mentioned, and I thought maybe he was, because there's a mention of like a big bear, but they're talking about Ugaki. And I was like, oh, when they said that, like, oh, werewolf. Is there like a werewolf character in this? And I thought maybe that would have been Kurtz. Like maybe like when he gets shy or something, maybe he'll transform or something. But no, that was quickly thrown to the trash, and it just turns out it's this weird ass German kid who has an obsession with like squid.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think they only showed up in that one episode, and well, at least him, and then he showed up again in that ONA thing. But Ugaki, like you kind of see him time to time because you see him like talk to Saki on the phone.
All right. So since you brought up the ONA, let's just jump to right there. So the ONA is honestly the big standout for me. I don't know about you, but the animation was a lot better. The writing was a lot better, and I was more invested in that one episode compared to the rest of the series. And I don't know, I really, really like that. And also because there's an invisible girl now, which I want to see more of. Just because like if you watch after the credits, there's like an entire scene dedicated to it. Like, you know, she's going to go visit Takahashi. And yeah, that whole show is really good because that's like, I felt like that the episode 13 or the ONA was like the climax to that first season. I was like a really good ending to that first season. And there is going to be a second season, so it's even more of an essential watch before going into the second season whenever it does come out, which it was just announced, I think, back in February.
And I think that was the reason why I liked the ONA. Like, one of the reasons why I liked it was because they showed Himari a lot. Like, I guess we never really talked about, like, Hikari has like a sister named Himari, and like they kind of established like right off the bat. They used her to establish right off the bat like that the Demi stuff is genetic mutation, because Himari is just, she's not a vampire, even though she's like Hikari's sister. And
twin sister.
Yeah, exactly. And then and for the most part throughout the show, whenever you see Himari, you see her like being kind of like serious or being annoyed by Hikari and all that. But I like in the ONA, like you get to see her how she is with her friends, and you can see that she's actually kind of silly. Like she's kind of like, and how like, because the way she acted when she was with her friends playing the games, and how she was like actually getting pretty scared when they were going to that forest or that shrine thing. I thought that was pretty interesting, actually seeing her like in with other people other than like with Hikari the whole time.
Yeah, you get to start seeing more humans, the human students that you get glances of near the end of the series, and it kind of comes full point in that episode 13, because that's probably the most, episode 12 and 13 is probably the most screen time with like regular humans outside of Takahashi. And I like that, because what's the point of having these monster girls and them talk about their problems if you're not going to put them in contrast with regular people? Because you kind of need those two sides. And that was like my big thing, is like, okay, like everything they're talking about sounds normal, and they'd probably relate a lot if they opened up to, which is like the big point of, I think, like episode 11. And it just it was kind of starting to, I don't know, get on my nerves a little bit that no one, like, they're introducing these like small characters and they would show up here and there, but for like 3 lines. Like there's that one guy who like is in love, and I remember, I want to say it was in like episode 11, they're discussing about like how Takahashi actually helps the students, and Hikari is like running around looking for them, and she sees them, and they call her over, and they all get jealous because Hikari gives that one boy a nickname.
I heard that.
Yeah, and so the guy that gets a nickname, he's in a lot of the episodes, just like they don't do anything with him really. And I wanted to see more of that, more interaction. I wanted to see less of Takashi interacting with the girls and more of the students interacting with the core cast. Yeah. And then seeing Takahashi interact more with Sato, who's closer to his age.
You talked about episode 11. I actually really like that episode, because that's where the vice principal kind of pretty much tells Takahashi that he shouldn't be too focused on the Demi girls, because they're gonna keep on relying on him instead of, like, you know, relying on other people. And that's when the human students came in. They're like, oh, you know what, that, you know, maybe that the vice principal raises a good point. Maybe we should actually try to, you know, become friends with the Demi girls and try to understand them a bit more and all that. And so at the end of the episode, you see actually all the human students trying to like talk to the Demi girls and like learn about them. Even the 2 girls who were the ones who like started talking shit about Yuki like way back, they even tried to, you know, get along with her and be like, oh man, your body temperature is really cold. It must really suck for you in the summer and stuff like that. And like, you know, they were like, you know, trying to hold like Machi's head and all that, and be like, oh man, your head's really heavy, like hung it around and stuff. So I actually really like that. And
I think Machi said earlier on in the series too, like, you know, she feels out of place just because like everyone kind of dances around her condition and makes her feel awkward. Like she wants someone to like I guess not make fun of her, but like be friendly with her. Like if she like someone were to say something, make it a joke or something, not at her expense, but because I want to say they do that in like the third or second episode where she's talking to some students and everyone's kind of dancing around the whole point.
Yeah.
Like if there's an elephant in the room and she doesn't want to be treated like the elephant in the room. She wants to be spoken of and talked to in similar, in a similar sense. She wants to be teased, just in a, because that's what friends do, and that's that's how friends actually do. Like that's how you show affection. You tease someone. Granted, you don't bully them. You just you tease. You kind of give them a little bit of crap, and they give you a little bit of crap back.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like with them dancing around her, like her being headless and all that. I guess that's kind of like dancing around like someone with a disability. They're like, oh, it's kind of uncomfortable talking about someone's disability, and we don't really feel comfortable like joking around about it, so let's just not talk about it at all. That's why they always like get uncomfortable when she brings it up and stuff.
Yeah, but I episode 12, I think I agree with you. Episode 11 was probably one of my favorite ones, but definitely episode 12, it just kept getting better. Like it straight up plateaued in the first half, and it wasn't probably till episode 8 that I start to really, really get into the series. And with that being said, what did you really think about the series overall? What was your initial impression?
I think overall, I like the show. I like all the characters. All the characters were interesting to me for the most part. I enjoyed watching them interact with each other, and the whole show was pretty much learning about the Demis and like how they live in society and how society sees them, and I thought all that was pretty interesting. And also because like it's like a slice of life anime. I really enjoy slice of life, and I did also think the show was pretty funny at times. Like we talked about some of the funny moments that happened in the show, and I'm looking forward to the second season because, like you said, like it took a while for them to establish the characters, but near the end of the show, that's when they pretty much were all established. So I think they can only go up from here.
I didn't care that much for the show up until probably season or episode 8 or 9. It had such a slow build up. There's another show, Hagane, I don't have many friends, that is kind of similar but is more fan servicey and also almost kind of borderline harem. And but the one of the things that I compared the parallel, or to compare the two, is they introduce the core cast and then slowly you start to see more people kind of trickle in. This one, it only shows the first two characters, Hikari and Takahashi, and then they take multiple episodes after that to show the other people come in. So you have an episode dedicated to Machi, you have like an episode and a half dedicated to Yuki, and so by the time you start to get all that, it's not until like 8 or 9 that you really start to feel like this show start to really propel forward. But by that time I started wanting more. The series was over with. Episode 12 and the special were like the best ones. I didn't like it. Overall, I would say like I did not care that much for it, but it redeemed itself near the end, and I am interested in season 2 because it feels like everything that has happened will pay off for season 2. There's no reason for season 2 to be as slow, just because it suffered from the exposition. That slow build up, and all the friendships and character dynamics have been established. You don't really have to worry about that, and so it's just going to be like the execution that I'm more kind of worried about for the second season. But if the last half of the first season, including the ONA, are to show like what's to come, I'm excited for it, and I do want to see it.
Yeah, same here. And I guess it's time to wrap this up. So thanks for listening to our discussion, everyone. It's funny because I said right off the bat that the video will be a bit shorter, but we're hitting at the 50-minute mark, so that's great. But I hope everyone doesn't mind, and I hope everyone enjoyed our discussion overall. And so if you enjoyed listen to our discussion, remember to give the video a like and tell us what you think about the show in the comments. So yeah, anyways, thank you for watching, everyone, and we'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.